So today we're going to talk about how to balance your ration and know if your horse is actually getting what he needs to get out of your feed. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start with the energy requirements of your horse. So you base this on your mature weight of your horse, not his weight as he's growing. To start with your energy requirements, you need to figure out what your horse's mature weight is. Now if your horse is already mature, then you just go off the weight that he's at. If you have a growing horse, then you need to, of course, figure out what he's probably going to weigh. An average quarter horse weighs about 1,100 pounds at a mature weight, whereas Clydesdale will mature to about 1,800 to 2,000 pounds. So it's something that you need to keep in mind when you're working with your requirements for your horses. Alright, so for this example, we are choosing an 1,100 pound mature weight horse, and we are going to do our intense work horse. So this horse is in training, okay? And so we're going to see here in the yellow that he needs 32.8 megacals of digestible energy per day to maintain his body weight while he is under intense work. Okay, so remember that DE is digestible energy and it's always measured in megacals. Alright, so the second step then is to choose what you are going to feed your horse. You have grass alfalfa, it can be fresh grass, it can be fresh alfalfa, it can be hay, it can be grass alfalfa hay, it can be grass hay, alfalfa hay, pellets, cubes. You have tons of choices for your forage, and the appendix table that I have given you all will let you choose whichever one you want to use. So for this example, I have chosen alfalfa hay in early boom, which is the boot stage. And you will find the energy for this in here. Again, this is 90% dry matter. Dry matter is going to make a difference here in a few more steps. I'll explain that a little bit. The digestible energy for this hay is 1.1 megacals per pound on a dry matter basis. Okay, then we're going to look over here, and it has 20% crude protein, 23% fiber. It's going to have 1.4% calcium and 0.3% phosphorus. So for step 3, we need to figure out the amount of hay needed for the energy requirement to be met. Again, we've chosen an intense working horse at 1,100 pounds that needed 32.8 megacals per day in order to maintain body weight. Our alfalfa hay, early bloom, has 1.1 megacals per pound and is 90% dry matter. Okay, so the dry matter is that completely dehydrated, it's going to weigh 90% of what the actual hay weighs. So when we are figuring our diets, we need to add the water that is in the feed, which isn't a whole lot with this alfalfa hay, but we need to add it back in to get an actual weight of our hay. Because when our hay is baled and whatnot, there is a little bit of moisture left. It's not completely dehydrated, and so we need to get the actual weight of the hay rather than what it is if it would be completely dehydrated. I hope that makes sense for you all. If you have any questions about that, please feel free to email me, text me, call me, whatever. But dry matter is when it has been completely dehydrated with no moisture at all, and at this particular hay will weigh 90% of the hay when it is completely dehydrated. Alright, so into the math. He needs 32.8 megacals. Our hay has 1.1. So we're going to divide the 32.8 megacals by the 1.1 megacals per pound. The megacals will cancel out, and we're left with 29.81 pounds of hay dry matter. Alright, so to get an as is, we need to add that weight back in for the moisture. Therefore, we're going to divide it by the 90% dry matter to get an as is hay amount. So 29.81 pounds dry matter divided by the 90% dry matter. The dry matters will cancel out, leaving us with 33.12 pounds of hay. Now we have to decide, can our horse eat that much hay? Okay, at the absolute most, your horse can only consume 2% of his body weight per day in forage. They simply cannot eat any more. Physiologically, it's just impossible. So we take our 1,100-pound horse times the 2% body weight, and that's 22 pounds. Uh-oh, he needs 33. So what do? Well, we're going to have to add a concentrate in order to get to the energy level that he needs for his work. So how much energy are we short? Again, we're going to use the 22 pounds now that we are feeding this animal. And we have 1.1 megacals per pound. And it is on a 90% dry matter, which gives us 26.9 megacals of energy in our hay. So if we take the 32.8 that he needs minus the 26.9 that he's getting from the hay, we are 5.9 or 6 megacalories short for the day for him to get what he needs. So now we have to figure out the amount of concentrate that's needed to make the difference. Well, we have to choose what we're going to feed as a concentrate. Again, for this example, I have chosen oats, just regular grain oats, okay? And if you can see down here, the oats has 90% dry matter, 1.45 megacals per pound of digestible energy, has a range of 10 to 13% protein, it has a range of 11 to 12% fiber, has 0.1% calcium and 0.35% phosphorus. And I want you to note here that oats are lower in calcium than they are phosphorus. This may or may not impact our feed ration as we get to the end. Okay, so he needs 6 megacals because that's the difference that we found out. And we're going to divide that by the megacals that is in the oats, which is the 1.45 megacals per pound. Again, the megacals are going to cancel one another out, and we're left with 4.12 pounds. Okay, 4.12 pounds divided by the 90% dry matter leaves us with 4.57 pounds of grain on an as-is basis. So this horse is going to need 4.5 pounds of oats a day to make up the energy that he does not get from the hay. So now we have to figure out if we're getting enough protein, calcium, and phosphorus into this horse. Here's how we do that. We have 22 pounds of hay and 4.5 pounds of oats. The hay has 20% protein, 1.4% calcium, and the 0.3% phosphorus. We have 4.5 pounds of oats at 11% protein, 0.1% calcium, and 0.35% phosphorus. Alright, so he needs 820 grams of protein, 25 grams of calcium, and 18 grams of phosphorus. In order to figure this out, we're going back to our math. We have 22 pounds that we're feeding him at 20% protein, which means he is getting 4.4 pounds of protein. Okay? Now we have to divide that by pounds per kilogram because we're wanting eventually to get to grams. Now, everyone should remember from grade school or middle school or whatever it was that we learned that there are 2.2 pounds per kilogram. So we take our 4.4 pounds, divide it by the 2.2 pounds, and we get 2 kilograms of protein. And then we must multiply that by 1,000 because there are 1,000 grams in a kilogram, and we have 2,000 grams of protein. So this horse right now is getting 2,000 grams of protein just from the hay. That's over 2 times what is needed. This could potentially be a problem, but let's continue. Now we have to figure out his calcium. We have 22 pounds of hay, again, at 1.4% calcium. So we have 22 pounds times 0.14, which equals 0.308 pounds of calcium. Again, we need to get to grams. So we divide that by the 2.2 kilograms per pound. The pounds will cancel out. We're left with 0.14 kilograms of calcium. And then we have to multiply that by 1,000 in order to get our grams again, which leaves us with 140 grams of calcium. This is over 5 times what he's needing. Okay, we need to start thinking. Let's continue with phosphorus. 22 pounds of hay times the 0.3% phosphorus leaves us with 0.066 pounds. Again, converting down to grams, we're going to end up with 30 grams of phosphorus. And 30 grams of phosphorus is almost 2 times what he's needing in his diet. Alright, so now we have to figure it all, again, for the protein, the calcium, and the phosphorus from the oats. So we have 4.5 pounds of oats that have 11% protein. That equals 0.495 pounds of protein. Again, following our math through to the grams. And we have 225 grams of protein just from the oats. Now we need to add that to what is provided in the hay. So we had 2,000 grams of protein in the hay, plus the 225 grams from the oats, and this horse is getting 2,225 grams of protein per day. This is 2.7 times what is needed. And the way I got that is the 2,225 grams divided by the 820 that is needed, and it came out to 2.7. Alright, so here is the first thing you need to know. You're wasting your money. Alfalfa hay is expensive. He doesn't need that much protein, and you're just throwing all of that money through his poop. Alright, so you're going to have great pasture poop, but it's not doing your horse much good. So this is also hard on the kidneys and the liver when the horse is excreting excess protein as urea. I want you to keep that in mind as well. Alright, so now we have to figure out the calcium and the phosphorus for the total diet. We have 4.5 pounds of oats at 0.1% calcium, which gives us 0.0045 pounds of calcium. Again, following through the math to the grams, we're going to get 2 grams of calcium from the oats. We're going to add that to the hay, and we're going to get 142 grams of calcium in the diet. He only needs 25, and this comes out to 5.68 times what is needed. Alright, now we have to go back to what we've learned previously. Excess calcium in the diet leads to what? Well, it leads to an increase in the hormone calcitonin, which inhibits the calcification of cartilage to bone. This is not a good thing, especially in a young horse that's in training. He's going to have weak bones, and he's also going to not perform very well because his bones are going to hurt. So, something we need to keep in mind as we go through this. Let's continue with phosphorus. We have 4.5 pounds of oats times a 0.35% phosphorus. Gives us 0.16 pounds of phosphorus. Again, following through the math to grams. That gets us to 7.2 grams of phosphorus. Alright, so our 30 grams from the hay plus the 7.2 from the oats gives us 37.2 grams of phosphorus, which is over 2 times what is needed. Alright, so we know this horse is getting just enough energy, and he's also getting an excess of protein, calcium, and phosphorus. The next thing, though, we have to do is to check our calcium to phosphorus ratio. 142 grams of calcium divided by the 37.2 grams of phosphorus equals 3.8 to 1. This is within its limits, but it is not ideal, as the ideal ratio is 2 to 1. So with all of that we have done, and we know now that his energy is met, but he's getting too much protein, which is hard on his kidneys and his liver, and he's getting too much calcium and phosphorus, which can potentially be harmful, we need to start over finding out a different concentrate or a different hay to add to our ration. This is a lot of math, and it takes quite a bit of time, but once you get your perfect ration, it is worth it.